Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Some fascinating developments going down in Rostermania with JoeDeceives suggesting that as far as he's concerned, Toronto completely blowing up their team is not out of the realms of possibility. They nearly did it last year, potentially capitalizing now on the fact that Scrappy's contract is due to expire at the end of the season, and it's likely that if they're not quite as good as they would like to be, Scrappy may well look to walk away at the end of the Black Ops 6 season. That means why not just sell him now and sell the other guys as well to turn a serious profit and potentially rebuild the entire team. Ben reckons there is a legitimate chance they do exactly this. We'll dive into it all over the coming minutes here, because if this does occur, where might Scrappy go if he was to be available? Very much interested to your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I would greatly appreciate it. First of all, a few more things here on Black Ops 6. This is some changes on the attachments, right? Gunsmith still exists. I will say the system seems a bit better than in previous years. They've tried to ensure that some of the attachments have upside but not so many downsides, just because that was, well, it's a frustration of previous years to figure out what these attachments are even going to do. I guess some discussion is if the gun is rapid fire, but it has no cons, then what are you going to do about that? So let's say back in Black Ops 2, or any game with rapid fire, typically it would increase the fire rate, obviously, that's what it does, but it would massively increase recoil as well, or maybe your hipfire spread would be worse, or something to that effect. So in some ways I think this is better, but just like, you know, why do we need Gunsmith anymore? It's unfortunate. It is what it is. This is Kenny, by the way, pretty funny. I know there's a couple of like lags, the frame skips or whatever that Kenny was getting here playing the game, but here he is on, I think this is called Skyline, and he does a clay straight off the map. Shotzzy, to be fair, did the same thing as well. So yeah, it is possible to fall off of this one, and if Claystat does make a return to competitive play, you better watch out, because there are definitely some possibilities here to fly yourself straight off the map. Couple of quick things on the Warzone side. Thought this was pretty funny last night. Firstly, Verdansk coming back to Warzone on Spring 2025. That, of course, has been big news that's been going around since Call of Duty Next yesterday, but also this is pretty funny. So, the OpTic boys, Shotzzy, Methods, and Kenny decided to team up here when they were playing the first kind of matches of Warzone here as Black Ops 6 is about to come through. And, maybe unsurprisingly, they come through and they win the entire thing. And I think they might have won like 3 or 4 games in a row, actually, at this point. So, yeah, as OpTic say, first Warzone win in Black Ops 6. And as Jake Hal says, CDL better than Warzone. Glad we could finally put this debate to bed. Now, this caused a bit of controversy just because Shotzzy, after he won, he said, Warzone who? Who are these guys that we're playing against? Because obviously the Warzone guys were also playing. However, Modern Warzone pointed out in the replies that, you know, these guys weren't meant to party up. It was meant to be like solo queue, just random queue to see who you come up with. And of course, because Shotzzy, Kenny, and Zinni were all on the same team, of course they were going to win. But Method is kind of roasting them. So this CDL versus Warzone stuff continues. It ain't ever going to go away, probably. But let's talk about some of these questions here in Rostermania, right? Because as Kenny says, this last season flew by, and honestly, on some degree, it kind of did. I mean, like, certainly from Major 3 to the end of the season seemed to go very fast indeed, and, you know, the World Cup's already now been and gone, and was at this point, you know, a couple of weeks ago, right, which is kind of crazy to think about. But, look, Kenny's looking forward to next year. Of course, the OpTic Texas team, they are not going to be changing, and, well, they're not going to change. If Scrappy was available, do you think about anything? I still don't think you do. If you're OpTic, you won the World Championship, you know what you're capable of. But, if you're FaZe and Scrappy was available, then does that change your thinking to some degree? I mean, there were rumours, of course, not really rumours with any backing, but people were just speculating that, well, if Scrappy's available, do you get Scrap for Drazah and run it up from there? I think you probably do if there's all sorts of out-of-game stuff going on, but I'm not necessarily so sure that there is anymore, so I'm not necessarily so sure you do it, and also, they just won the World Cup. However, Scrappy is, and HyDra is, from the SMG perspective, realistically, at least in terms of players that may potentially be available, the absolute most highly sought after players. But the theory has been for some time, they're not going anywhere. HyDra's contracted, Scrappy's contracted. What are you going to do? Let's see next year what happens next off season, especially if maybe Falcons are going to come and spend some big money to come into play. That's when things are going to go crazy. But I wouldn't rule out the possibility yet of this off season still getting very interesting, and there are a couple of reasons why, as we'll see here in a second. Firstly, Overactive Media, the owners of Toronto Ultra, they talk about a few interesting things here in this, well, report. They put out a press release, as they quite often do. And there's a couple of interesting things mentioned. Certainly this one that said, owing to, again, following the termination of the Call of Duty League franchise obligations, the termination eliminated 35.2 million Canadian dollars, so 20 million Great British sterling, pounds sterling, which is basically 25 million US. So that's pretty interesting just to note that, because the entry fee we thought was 25 million US. That's basically the number they say, but those were the outstanding entry fees. I think we heard a little while ago that the entry fee was actually 27.5 million. So maybe what they're saying here is they only ended up paying a couple of million of that, and then everything else has been eliminated, and I guess the rest has maybe been returned. So effectively that's $25 million that they've got back in their pockets based on this whole thing, and therefore they say, well, we have one of the strongest balance sheets in the industry. So look, they've got cash on some level, sure. So maybe why would you blow up your team and make changes? Fair enough. But there are potentially other reasons why they might do that. And I'm not going to lie, this Toronto management over the last couple of years has flirted with these ideas for some time. And it's possible that now could be the time they pull the trigger, at least according to JoeDeceives. Now, this is another piece. The EWC event that happened was pretty last minute. Nobody really knew it was happening until a couple of, weeks before I found out I was going. And then a couple of months before the pros found out, yeah, okay, this is a tournament. So the contracts that the players had signed at the start of the season largely took them from the start of the season until the World Championship. As a result, probably like every single player, at least unless they were, I don't know, it depends on the contracts, but lots of players signed some sort of extension agreement to take them through EWC. Presumably until, the end of August or whatever the case is. Maybe their contract was until the end of July to cover champs, and then because EWC happened, they were like, okay, we'll contract you until the end of August or whatever. So for many players over the next few days, these extensions are now going to be up, and therefore we're probably going to start to see more development in terms of players being free agents, because they are not free agents until their extensions are done, and then there's going to be some sort of question on that. The other question that JoeDeceives comes up with is what Toronto are thinking right now.
With this option. That being said, we get to option B, and I think this is the most interesting one. I'm surprised that no one is really talking about it, because there is a world if you were Toronto Ultra, and again, didn't have the best of season last year. You won an event, but kind of petered off. And no Scrap's going to walk at the end of next year. Why not just blow it up now? You have a lot of demand for him, for Scrap. I think even the teams that you would think that would stick, like OpTic and FaZe, I can have a little bit of a conversation if Scrap comes to the market. Do we want to let him go to a competitor and make them better? That's not to say that OpTic or FaZe won't bid for him, but they'll think about it. But I think more importantly, you can also get value for CleanX and Envoy. It's a very weak SMG market right now. These are both very good, talented players who have won events the last couple of years. Envoy's got a ring as well. They are a hot commodity for a team like Thieves that probably need to upgrade the SMG level. Like a Vancouver, you kind of see my thought. There is a lot more demand for the SMG role, and you can kind of sell pretty much everybody in Toronto and start over. Do with Thieves and kind of pick up challengers players, or pick up some kind of leftover CDL guys and kind of do a budget team and sort of rebuild from there. I honestly believe that there is not a non-zero chance that Toronto does this. They've flirted with it. From what I know about their situation, the last 2 years, they've kind of flirted with the thinking on this. And they've never really been able to pull the trigger because the core of the team wanted to stick together. They wanted to keep it going. They feel like they can win. But maybe this is the season, especially considering Scrap's contract situation, that the dam kind of breaks on that one and they decide to kind of part ways with everybody. And I think it would really spice up Rostermania. And to be honest, the reason I also think that this is possible is that Rostermania has been really slow right now. We haven't heard a lot of rumors about who is thinking about what. The reason is I think a lot of teams are holding their cards close to their chest, because if they're thinking about Toronto players, they don't want that news to get out, because then everybody's going to kind of connect two and two together that Toronto's kind of a fire sale situation right now. And Toronto's going to have no leverage. The team buying players from Toronto's going to have no leverage, and it's going to turn into a massive mess. So I think right now, for me, as much as y'all want to see option A, because I would love to see Toronto give it one more go, I actually think at the moment that option B might be the most likely option that Toronto is going to go for. And it'll make Rostermania very spicy. That turns out to be true.
So initially and understandably, people are going to say, Ben's just yapping, what is he on about? But I will say there were rumours going around in the early days, just shortly after the World Cup, that yes, this was at least a possibility on the table. The thing is with Toronto that you never really know what they're going to do. Last season, we thought they were going to do this. I mean, there were rumours that Insight and CleanX were going to be sold as a package deal to Thieves. That never happened. Thieves didn't have any money, basically. And also, eventually the team decided to run it back because Scrappy wasn't happy that his teammates were were potentially going to get sold off, and he didn't want to be stuck there with a team of basically Challengers players. So eventually they just decided to run it back. So this year, rumours were circulating that, yeah, Toronto might consider doing the same as what they were going to do last year and blow up the roster and sell as many players as they can, because the team didn't deliver in the end of the season the results they wanted, and there's money to be made potentially by trying to rebuild a team and do what they did before to even get to this point. And, you know, at some point, teams just run their course. So maybe if there's any time as Bentis to capitalise on that, now is the time, given the fact that there's lots of interest in those players if they were to come to the market. But the thing is with Toronto that it's incredibly difficult to take it super seriously, because like they can always change their mind, it seems, this organization. It does raise further questions though on Bance, of course. If you guys saw at the end of that Toronto video they did the other day, when Bance is sitting down here kind of saying good to be back, Bance then says excited for what's to come, and then even Hixie says congrats brother, no one deserves it more. Now I still feel like there's got to be a bit of baiting going on here, but I mean still, what if they do blow it up and Bance becomes a player again? I mean maybe it's not absolutely impossible. We know that Insight is a restricted free agent, and Scrappy is obviously under contract for one more year, but you know, Ben isn't necessarily wrong that Scrappy will be looking at the situation and thinking, okay, this team this season, look, Scrappy is now 0 for 2 on rings, and for a guy like Scrappy, he would like to have a ring by now, right? He came second in his first year, third in his second year, and obviously he's going to want to get back on top. Does he have full faith in that roster that they can? I mean, maybe, but things behind the scenes of that organization always seem a little bit complicated. And I'm sure that at least part of Scrappy's mind had said, well, you know, what if FaZe gave me the offer? What if OpTic gave me an offer? What would I do? Would I leave to go there? Like, how would the buyout situation work from Toronto? And it's been kind of considered that, yeah, HyDra's not going anywhere from Cloud9 because he's under contract. Scrappy's not going anywhere from, like, Toronto because he's under contract. But, like, Toronto don't operate in the same way that Surge operates, where they're like, oh, well, we're just going to, you know, milk this guy for everything he's worth for a year and let him then walk away for free if he wants to. I think Toronto would be more along the lines of, well, if we can get big money for Scrappy now, then maybe that's worth the trade-off and begin another rebuild. I mean, even Cloud9, I mean, this is what I talked about in the Dope Check show that we did just after the World Cup, is like, if you're HyDra, if you're Scrap, you've got to be thinking that maybe teaming up is the way to go. And if you want to form the absolute best team possible, right? So would Cloud9 have the money to go to Toronto and say, hey, we want to buy Scrap and make that happen? But, you know, if that was to happen, who does he replace? Because you can't imagine they want to replace Sib. I mean, Sib was better this season than basically anyone else was on average, apart from HyDra. So... but then it's like, where do you go? Just Scrap and Sib as the AR duo? Maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. Do you keep Skyz? I don't know. Just some interesting thoughts, but like people were saying, oh, Ben don't know what he's talking about. Like, I will say that what Ben's saying is not entirely unfounded. Whether it actually happens or not, I think is, you know, a very different question, but I'm just sure that Toronto have considered it. This is kind of like the way that organization works. I'm sure that it's been a consideration as to whether that happens this season. And to be fair, they've already seemingly made that decision with Insight, right? Like, you still might expect them to run it back, but they've still said that Insight can explore options, and they're looking to sell him. If they get a good buyout for him, they're looking to sell him. So definitely that possibility has crossed the mind. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments. This is kind of interesting, I'm not going to lie, from Cloud9. Like, it's obviously baked to some degree, but they did like that tweet from Jake Hale, the fact that Attach is a free agent. So, you know, whether there's anything in that, probably not, but at least worth considering. And speaking of, well, we talked about Shotzzy earlier in the video. He has now reached number 7, just passing CleanX in terms of biggest, well, views on YouTube for a Call of Duty Pro ever. So Shotzzy's now into number 7 at 71.6 million. CleanX, Crowder, Bose, Zoom is at 78 million. Then it jumps up to Big Timer. Then it's, you know, the big guns really in terms of Doug, Nadeshot, Scump, and then Guitargo, which is kind of incredible. Every time I see these lists, by the way, that Brian Stats does every year, I'm always like, wow, because this channel, thanks to all of you guys and your support over the last several years, is nearly at 100 million views, which is like so insane. Because these numbers are so big, but somehow this channel nearly has like, I think it has like 96 million views right now. So technically, like this channel and us and you guys and everything are like number 6 on this list, which is so absurd to me. So very much into your thoughts, as always, and all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.